Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Gwen Brinheis. I'm the Assistant Registrar, Recruitment and International here at the Daniels faculty, and I am very pleased that you have joined us this morning. And so just a quick overview of what to expect this morning. If you are joining us from the local area, if you are joining us from another time zone, perhaps it's afternoon or evening for you. We will start with a presentation, after which we will open it up for your questions to be answered. So if you do have any questions at all during the presentation, you can go ahead and use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and you can submit your questions there, and we will answer them after the presentation has finished. And so we will do our absolute best to get through as many and if hopefully all of the questions that you have. And so definitely feel free to make use that button. But I will pass it over to Professor Peter Seeley, who will lead us through a presentation on our undergraduate program in architectural studies. Over to you, Peter.
Thank you very much, Gwen, and welcome to all of you who've joined us today. My name is Peter Seeley, and I'm an assistant professor at the Daniels faculty, where I have the honor of serving as director of our undergraduate honors Bachelor of Arts Architectural Studies program. Now, what does that mean? So the University of Toronto is Canada's leading university, and it offers degrees in many programs. The Daniels faculty is part of this big university, and we offer degrees at many different levels in architecture, landscape architecture, urban design, visual studies, which means art, and forestry. Among these options, our largest program for people doing their first university degree, which is why it's called undergraduate, is the Architectural Studies program. And the full name of the degree is the Bachelor of Arts Architectural Studies, and sometimes we abbreviate that as BAAS. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about this morning. But first, let me introduce myself a little. I have been teaching at the Daniels faculty since 2016, and I've taught courses in many different subjects at many different levels. But the undergraduate architectural studies program is the one I know the best. Our undergraduate students at Daniels are fantastic, and I'm really honored to have the privilege to lead this program. Today, I'm going to endeavor to give you an overview of the program to explain what it is we do and why you should do it, or why maybe you should do it. As Gwen mentioned, we want to answer your questions as best we can. But most importantly, I want to start a conversation with you about why architecture matters and how you can contribute to shaping our buildings, our cities, and our landscapes. And this is a conversation that I hope we can continue when we meet in person next year in this building, the Daniels faculty's home at 1 Spadina Crescent. And we're actually looking at a photograph of a model of our building, and this model has been cut in half so that you can see inside some of the main spaces in our building. And so if there's one thing I really hope I can do today, it's to make you imagine yourself at home in this building, because you're going to share it with a truly dynamic, diverse, and fantastic set of teachers, staff, and students who come from Toronto, from around Canada, and actually from all over the world. Now, why study architecture? Many students are drawn to architecture because it is a profession which combines science and the humanities, calculation and creative art, design and construction, working with computer software, and working by hand to make drawings and models. And we have built our program at the University of Toronto to reflect our students' desire to combine these multiple areas of knowledge and these multiple and different ways of working. People study architecture because they believe that the spaces we live and the spaces we work in, where we play and where we sleep and where we learn, they believe that these matter. We need good housing, well-lit schools, beautiful train stations, and stunning sports facilities, because all contribute to making our everyday lives dignified and happier. I won't put you on the spot this morning, but I'm sure that each of you can think of spaces where you feel special. A house, a swimming pool, a garden, a restaurant, a shop, a museum, an airport. And by studying architecture, you help to understand how the choices made by architects have made these spaces the way they are. Whether there's a low ceiling to make it feel intimate, or a high ceiling to make a space perhaps feel grand. Whether the windows are oriented in a certain direction to let in sunlight at a certain time of day. These are all decisions that architects are making. Architecture is crucial to combating climate change. The construction industry produces huge carbon emissions, and the buildings which surround us contain enormous amounts of embodied carbon. So how we can reuse existing buildings and how we can build new ones with better energy performance is a crucial ecological question today, and sustainability is a central focus of the BAS program. Architecture is also at the forefront of experiments with new computer software, robotics, digital fabrication, and the development of artificial intelligence. And therefore, the teaching we offer at the University of Toronto's Daniels faculty is heavily focused upon technology. We want to learn how buildings are put together, how different materials perform in different conditions, and how buildings and materials can be adapted to meet new needs. More and more with each passing year, we live as humans on an urbanized planet. Most, but of course not all, but most people live in cities or their surroundings. And cities like Toronto, which you see on screen, are magical because they bring together people from all over the world to live and work together. To adapt a common expression, a city is far more than the sum of its parts. But cities also require design and planning to make sure that millions of people can live harmoniously and thrive together. I could go on and on with reasons to study architecture, but I'll end with one more. Some buildings are new, but many others provide us with personal links to the past. It is a very special feeling to stand in a building and realize that it has witnessed human life for generations. And we can ask, why are our buildings, our cities, our landscapes, why are they the way they are? The goal of the Bachelor of Arts Architectural Studies program is to do two things at once. And here I just want to slow down for a second and explain this. The Daniels faculty's BASS program is an excellent, in fact, it's the very best preparation for future careers in architecture and related fields like landscape architecture and urban design. But at the same time, the University of Toronto's Architectural Studies program is also a great preparation for students who decide to take a totally different path with their careers. We are very, very proud of our graduates who have become architects and landscape architects and urban planners. But we are equally proud of our graduates who right now are at medical school or law school, who are in business, who are working in the tech industry, who are working in government, etc. Studying architecture will allow you to understand the world we inhabit much better. It will introduce you to skills, to ways of thinking and ways of working, which you can then apply to any field or to almost any field of human endeavor. And I think that's an incredible strength of what we have built at the University of Toronto. One of the most common questions I am asked at events like today's is, what kind of courses will I take? And sometimes it can be very hard to imagine the variety of things that architecture students are asked to do. So let me take a few minutes and try to help. In both fall and winter of your first year, you'll have a design studio course, kind of a course that is teaching you fundamental skills of architecture and getting you to work with an instructor to go through iterations of your design. In the fall, that course is called ARC 100, and you certainly don't have to remember the name of the number, but I'm just trying to give you an idea of the different kinds of courses that you'll take. So in the fall, in ARC 100, Drawing and Representation 1, you're going to study a space in Toronto, like a cafe or a shop. You'll be introduced to the city at the same time that we're going to teach you the different kinds of drawings that architects make, and you'll start to learn computer software in order to make drawings, like the ones you see on screen. These were done for the final assignment for ARC 100. They're students trying to tell us what particular spaces are like and to combine them together into a very evocative panel. Then in the winter, you'll take JAV 101, Design Studio 1, and you'll do a variety of design exercises, including making a short film. Before then, you will design, for the first time, you'll design a very small building in downtown Toronto. In the fall of your first year, you'll also take ARC, or ARC 180, Computation and Design, in which you will begin to learn, you'll start this a bit in ARC 100, but ARC 180, we really focus on the different kinds of computer software learned by architects, as well as some coding. And this is really set up because I know some people have been doing this already since they were in elementary school, and other people are completely new to most computer technology, and the course is really set up to make sure that both kinds of student can really thrive in it. Now, it's very, very hard to know what kind of software architects will use 5 or 10 years from now. Things change very quickly. So our focus is on teaching you how to learn new software, so you will be ready to adapt in your own careers. And I know that the transformational effects of AI can seem scary. I mean, I certainly worry about this. I know a lot of people are talking about it. But studying into architecture will bring you into contact with new modes of working with digital design tools. In other words, you get in on the ground floor and help figure out how AI is going to change architecture as it's changing. You'll also, in your first year, have history courses, JAV 151, JAV 152, where you start to understand why our buildings and our cities are the way they are and how they have changed and evolved over time. You'll also, and I think this is a great strength of the Daniels faculty, because we also have a visual studies undergraduate program, you'll take what are effectively art courses. So JAV 120 looks at kind of debates and critical arguments in art today. And JAV 130 is an introduction to using different media to make your own artworks. And then finally, I will teach you in a history of technology course called ARC 181, which is really a chance to reflect upon all the tools that you're being taught and that you're learning in your other courses. Alongside that, you'll also take elective courses from outside the Daniels faculty. And these can be anything: calculus, computer science, business, literature, history, etc. Now, that can sound like a lot of different things, and it might even seem a touch overwhelming. But I am very, very sincere and truthful when I say that I think this is an excellent way to begin your university education. To have a number of different classes, each of which requires a slightly different way of working. The studio, the history courses, computer course, art courses, electives, and something totally different. Essentially, you were working all the different parts of your brain and developing all many different kinds of mode of study and practice on a daily and a weekly basis. And in fact, each of your terms at the University of Toronto will have a similar mixture of courses. And I really think that's an excellent way to develop yourself as a person and also to prepare yourself for many different kinds of careers. Another feature of the Daniels faculty, which I'm going to explain to you right now, is our streams in the architectural studies program. And what this means is that in first and second year, all of our architectural studies students take the same courses, except for the electives that you're choosing from the rest of the university. But otherwise, all your courses at Daniels are required. They're the same for everyone. After second year, you can apply for different streams. And all that the streams mean is that the people in a certain stream will take slightly different courses in third and fourth year. The idea is to try to help you figure out your own passions and strengths and interests, and then to make sure that your curriculum for third and fourth year, the courses you're going to take, are aligned with that. So we have 4 streams. There's a design stream with a real focus on studio and building design. And on screen, the student is actually presenting a model, and those pieces of concrete, those are actually what you would call the negative spaces in the building. In other words, it's like she's taken every room and the size of the kind of air in the room has been cast as a block, meaning that the holes are things like corridors and floors and walls. So this is kind of the staircase, and you can like the space inside the staircase. We also have a technology stream, very much based on computer software, robotics, building technology, structures, the mechanical systems in our buildings. And on screen, you see some students. What's really great is they will have designed, this is a design for a foldable roof shade. And the students will have designed that using computers and by making small models. And now they're testing what they've done with a physical prototype. And I think it's really fantastic to move back and forth between the digital and making things and working on the computer and then going to the workshop to make things. Thirdly, we have a history and theory stream for students who want to focus very much on reading and writing and critical thinking about architecture. And then finally, we have a comprehensive stream, which it has its own studio and its own courses, and it's also great for students who've decided that they want to be focusing on something else. So for instance, sometimes students decide to take what's called a minor, and all that means is you get another line added to your degree to say that you've taken a certain number of courses in some other field of study. So you could get a minor in French literature, or you could have a minor in commerce, or you could have a minor in computer science. Sometimes students decide to do 1 or 2 of them. Sometimes students might also decide they know they want to be applying for medical school or for law school, and therefore they actually want time and space to take pre-medical courses or to study for the examinations to get into those programs. And the comprehensive stream is set up to allow students to do that. Having gone over our first year courses, briefly mentioned the streams, and again, these are the sorts of things that I can explain more about in the Q&A. These are also things that when you get to Daniels, obviously will help guide you through. But now I want to take a few minutes to speak about some of our special offerings. So students in their 3rd and 4th years are eligible for a program called DRIP. And DRIP, or DRIP, is our Design Research Internship Program. And this provides selected students with a paid 6-week internship with leading Toronto architects. This is a great chance to gain professional experience in a well-planned and organized setting, working for a really good design office in Toronto. Every summer, we also offer a number of design build courses. And these are courses where students work with an instructor. They design some kind of small structure, maybe a pavilion or the lookout that you see on screen, and then they go build it themselves. And it's a really special moment for students, not just to design a building and draw it, but also to go to use the tools and the materials to actually build it. And the results are always stunning. This is a lookout not too far from Toronto, looking over Lake Ontario. It's really beautiful. We also have a number of summer courses that travel around the world. For the last few summers, I've taken students to Berlin in Germany for a course on architecture and cinema. And here you see a group of students on screen making a film using a 16mm camera in Berlin. And in recent years, other students have gone to Athens in Greece, to Costa Rica, to Ghana, and to Morocco, among other places. And we're really proud of offering these travel opportunities. Where will you find our graduates? Well, many decide to stay at the Daniels faculty for their professional Master of Architecture or Master of Landscape Architecture degree. In other words, many people keep going at the University of Toronto. You'll also find our graduates at world-leading universities studying for their master's degrees. And architecture is like law or medicine and other professions, in that after your bachelor's degree, you need a master's degree to become a licensed architect. But you'll also find students doing so many other things. And as I've mentioned, you'll find them at law schools and medical schools. You'll find them starting their own businesses. You'll find them working in user experience design. You'll find them involved in municipal planning departments. You'll find them doing so many fascinating things. And I think the reason why our students succeed so well, whether it's in architecture or whether it's in something totally different, is that students at the Daniels faculty in the architectural studies program, they learn a ton about computer technology. They also learn a ton about making things themselves. In other words, to go back and forth between the digital and the physical. Students learn presentation skills, and they become very, very strong at sharing and defending their ideas. Students also learn how to design, how to make something, how to get feedback, how to improve it, how to get more feedback, how to really productively go from not knowing how to solve a problem to being able to solve a problem in a very convincing way. Students learn very powerful image making skills to be able to explain things visually. And our students also develop very strong writing and critical thinking skills. And I think this is almost the best possible preparation for anything you decide to do in the rest of your life. Now, how to apply. Gwen and I can provide more information a bit later, but basically there are two parts to our application. In the first part, you go through a standard Ontario University's application. But after that's done, you will be asked to submit something called a one idea. The one idea is a short essay. I might be a little bit off, but I think it's around 500 words in length. You are given 4 possible questions. You choose one of them, and you write, again, this short text of about 500 words. It's a chance for you to demonstrate your ability to communicate through writing, that you can write well. And it's also a chance for you to tell us about yourself and why you want to study at the Daniels faculty. But there's one more thing, and it's optional. So you've done the Ontario University's application. You've done the one idea essay. But then you have a choice, and it's optional. And that's whether you want to submit up to 6 images of works you have produced or things you have done. Sometimes this would be called a portfolio. The reason it's optional is we know that many students have had fantastic art courses at their high schools. And other students have been to high schools that might not even have art courses. Some students are already very confident expressing themselves visually with images, and for others would much rather just rely on their high school grades and their essay to tell us who they are. It's up to you if you include these images or not. However, if you have works of which you are proud, which help to explain who you are and what your interests are, then please do include them. And please don't feel you have to limit yourself to artworks. Perhaps you made a rocket in science camp, which you can photograph or diagram. Perhaps you're passionate about cooking and you can photograph your experiments in the kitchen. Perhaps you've made paintings or sculptures or digital art, but perhaps you also have photographs, beautiful photographs that you've taken of people playing the violin. Again, think very, very broadly about this. Gwen is now going to moderate a question and answer session, and I'll be here to answer as much as I can. Please don't feel shy. Please don't hesitate to ask anything. And you're also welcome to reach out by email to us. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Peter, and thank you to those who have already submitted quite a few questions. So we will go ahead and get started on the questions that have been submitted. So the first question is, how many offers are made each year? How many spaces are available in the program?
So we never can answer that kind of with perfect precision because it depends how many people apply, how strong are the applicants, etc. But what I can tell you is this. Usually that first year cohort, like the group of people entering the architectural studies program, it's usually about 225 or 250 students. And it depends what you compare it to. That could seem really big or really small. What I think is great about that size is it means that no matter where you're coming from or what your interests are, you'll find a group of similar people inside the cohort. So for instance, out of that 225, some people are really, really, really passionate about computer technology and coding. Other people are really into art. A few are passionate about sports, or maybe they're even playing for varsity sports teams. About half of those people come from Toronto, but then half come from other places. The picture I'm trying to paint is of a big group where you can find your individual place and where you can find some really amazing friends at the same point that you're part of this larger group of really creative and interesting people.
Thank you so much. So this next question is about the expected grades that one might need. What would you be looking for in the expected GPA from incoming students?
I believe we say that we're looking approximately for at least in Ontario, and I realize it can be different wherever you are in the world, for grades approximately in the mid 80s. The program is quite competitive, if it is, but because we also consider the one idea and the optional one idea images, it means that in certain cases, students who might have a couple of weaker grades or a slightly lower average can be admitted, but it also means that it's not guaranteed just because you have slightly higher grades that you'll be accepted.
Okay, so this question is, and hopefully I'm understanding it correctly. If somebody applies to architecture and they don't get in, and they took a visual arts course instead, is it possible to transfer into the architectural studies program after first year?
It is. So, and this happens. It is certainly not guaranteed, but it's definitely something that does happen. In fact, we have many fantastic students who've transferred in. And so there are two things. One is to transfer in, you'd have to go through an application process. The second thing is during your first year, one thing you can do, let's say you're at the University of Toronto and you're studying something else. You can't take all of them, but you can take some of the architectural studies courses, which would both kind of let you see what's happening in architectural studies and to kind of be certain that you want to transfer into it. But secondly, it also gives you the chance to pick up some of the credits towards your degree if you are accepted to transfer in.
Thank you. So this next question is possibly more of an academic advising question, but I will pose it to you anyways. And I think I also have a response from the academic advisors. But is it possible to take business as a minor while studying in architectural studies?
And what did academic advisors? I generally think all kinds of different minors are possible and they're quite common. In each case, there might be slightly different requirements of like which courses you have to take, or if there's a procedure in order to sign up for a minor. But actually, let me stop talking and let me see if what Gwen says.
So our academic advisors have advised that if students are interested in pursuing business, they might want to explore economics because they can do it both as a major and as a minor if they choose to. But there's usually as Peter said, there's quite a few different options available to students. And so you can explore that a little bit as well. This question is in regards to courses specifically. Are there any courses related to interior design that could be taken?
We don't have a specific interior design course, but in almost every design studio you take, we'll be talking about interiors just as much as we're talking about exteriors. So for instance, if we go right to your very first semester, ARC 100, that's about studying a cafe or a restaurant or a shop in Toronto, that's almost entirely about drawing the interior space of that cafe. Similarly, as you progress and you go through different design courses, in fact, in all of them, we're talking about the exterior just as much as the interior. And similarly, as you're learning about materials, as you're learning about lighting, as you're learning about structure, as you're learning about how people use spaces, you're really learning all sorts of qualities of interior design.
So this question is in regards to the portfolio, and I think there's a little bit of confusion because for visual studies, it is a mandatory part of the application, and
Yes.
for architectural studies, it is
Optional.
optional. So there's a number of questions in relation to that. Is it possible that if your one idea response isn't strong, can a portfolio make up for that?
If you submit images, a portfolio, they will be considered alongside the one idea. So I suppose the answer to the question that you've just asked is yes, that strong images will help your application in the same way very weak images might hurt your application. But the way I would think of it is you've got these different elements that help tell us about you. Obviously, the kind of grades and the work you've done in high school, your answer to the one idea question, and also, if you decide to include them, your images. And together, they give us a picture of who you are that allow us to make a decision.
Thank you. So there's a question about residence, and I'm not entirely sure if you can answer this, Peter. If
Okay.
I might be able to answer some of it as well. But where do architectural studies students, so Daniel students, where do they live on campus? Is there a residence that architecture students live in?
So many, in fact, quite a lot of Daniel faculty students live in a residence called Chestnut. And it's about, it depends how quickly you walk. I think it's about, say, a 10-minute walk from Daniels, or 12 or something like that. But what's great with it is that you're there with tons of other Daniels faculty students. So there'll be like a big group of Daniels students kind of, heading out at a particular time of day to come to Daniels for a class. There's some other new residences which have just opened, including Oak House, OAK, which is really close, quite close to Daniels. And then otherwise, you'll find a few Daniels students at all sorts of different residences around the campus. I believe you list preferences, or you somehow kind of communicate, hey, this is the one I'd like best. But again, Chestnut ends up being pretty special just because it's home to so many Daniels people. And often students will mention that Daniels is great because not all, but most of your courses will be in our building at 1 Spadina Crescent. So you get basically to see people and to spend a lot of time there. And then there's also Chestnut. So people can between the two, people can develop really strong friendships with colleagues in our program.
What would you say makes a strong portfolio for the application?
Creativity, quality, and a willingness to take risks. What I mean by that, the creativity is simply you're showing in images who you are, you're adding to our picture of you. And again, creativity can be playing the violin or cooking just as much as it can be painting or sculpture. Quality does not mean, oh, things are perfect or they look like they belong in a museum. But quality means that you committed to the thing you were doing, you worked hard at it, and you got it to a good state, you photographed it well. In other words, you took the time to take a nice photograph of something. And say if it's, whether it's a painting or whether it's a garden, that you've kind of worked hard at it. And then finally, what's also important, in other words, I don't want anyone to think of this as, oh, there's some kind of formula and I just need, I need one of this and two of that and one of this, but in color. But rather it means, by willingness to take risks, I mean each of you has your own passions. Each of you has your own interests. We are looking to put together a brilliant and diverse class of people. And we know that some of the people we want are going to be fantastic with robotics, but other people are going to be fantastic at sketching, and other people are really going to be into music, and for others it's math and calculus. So it's for you to think, okay, how can I visually represent? How can I show you the things that I'm really passionate about? And so it's a bit of a challenge, but it's also an invitation for you to say, okay, I want to make sure that the people looking at this know that I really like making my own clothes, or they know that I love hot rodding cars, or that they know that I love making a certain kind of world in Minecraft. And then the question is, how can you make images of that help to explain this?
Thank you. So I'm going to rephrase this question that has come in just a little bit, but basically our students are often comparing universities that they are hoping to apply to. And so what might make the Daniels Architectural Studies undergrad program maybe stand out a little bit?
Great question. I would always start with Toronto. The possibility to study right in the middle of downtown Toronto, which means that we get the city as our laboratory. So in so many different courses, what we're actually trying to figure out is, what is the future of Toronto? What if we put housing on a certain site? What if a different street or a different neighborhood would evolve in a brand new direction? And we're also studying what's going on in Toronto. So we're going out to look at the transformation of the Portlands and the way the Don River has been completely rehabilitated in recent years. And we are going out to see amazing buildings that are changing Toronto. So the city of Toronto would be the first, to be right downtown in the heart of the city. The second, and this goes together with that, is the University of Toronto. That we have Canada's best university. It's a very, very ambitious university with excellent students and with excellent professors. And it's also large enough to help you, to support you, no matter what your interests are. So for instance, earlier we talked about the possibility of commerce or especially economics as a minor or a major. And you'll be able to study with really, really amazing economists. The kind of people who are shaping Canada's economy will be teaching those courses. But if your interest is to learn a new language, like Japanese or Spanish, the University of Toronto will support you in that. If your interest is to study political science, or if your interest is to prepare to apply to medical school, the University of Toronto has fantastic courses that will support you and push you as you do so. And the kind of variety that I just mentioned is also the strength of the Daniels faculty. So you're studying at a faculty and you'll take courses with experts in landscape architecture who'll be teaching you about ecology. And that might actually lead, and often with our students, it might lead them towards a career in landscape architecture or towards a career in the environmental sciences. You will also study with professors in forestry, learning about how wood is so central to our natural environment, to what Canada is, but then also learning how wood is transformed into a sustainable building material. You will have courses with professors of visual studies, with professors of urbanism, with professors of technology, with professors of the history of architecture. And the chance to learn from all these different people is really amazing. If you add that to some of the opportunities that I mentioned in my presentation, what you get is a truly beautiful, stimulating, practical, and excellent undergraduate education that can prepare you, as I've mentioned. Tons of our graduates are on their way or they've become architects, but so many others are doing different things. And I think it's the possibility of keeping your options open, but it's actually so much more than that. It is developing yourself in many different ways to be prepared for careers and to be ready and to adapt well to change. And I think that's what we're offering in our architectural studies program.
Thank you, Peter. So the next two questions are kind of admissions related questions. So I'll do my best to answer those. And then if you want to jump in, feel free. So this question is about whether or not grade 11 courses can affect the chances of being accepted. And so to that, I would say your grade 11 courses are sometimes used as predictors. So we can predict what you might get in a grade 12 grade. But just to be very clear, the admission requirements are your grade 12 courses. And so for students who are currently studying, all offers of admission are conditional upon receipt of your final grades and, of course, completing your Ontario Secondary School diploma, or if you are coming from a different curriculum or a different country, completing your high school studies. And so sometimes they can be used to assist, but they're not the final kind of say in terms of admission requirements. There's a few questions about dates, and so I'm just going to put in the chat a link to the admission requirements because it does include all of the dates that you have to have things submitted by. And so I would encourage everybody to take a look at that, make sure you're clear on the dates because they are firm deadlines. And so you want to make sure you're paying attention to that as well. This next question is in regards to, I think, a little bit of a student experience. And so I know
Oh,
neither of us are students, but I think we can probably kind of answer this question. And so this is in relation to the University of Toronto has this college system of Trinity, Innis, Victoria, etc. Is it possible for Daniel students to be in Daniels and also a part of a college? Do they have an architectural student union or social group? How do students kind of get engaged with the
Okay.
Daniels faculty?
So I can answer that. The first part, yes, some Daniel students end up living in colleges like Trinity College or University College. It's certainly not guaranteed. It's not, it's it's both common but not a huge number of students, simply because Daniels is its own separate faculty. But I can absolutely think, in fact, I know many students who live at University College or Trinity College elsewhere. Yes, there's an architect. There's, in fact, there's a very active student union, the AVSSU or AVSU, which is for Architecture and Visual Studies Student Union. Um, Among other things, you can find them on Instagram and see all the great things that they're up to. And they organize tons of clubs and lots of activities for students, and they also represent students. We also have a number of student-led initiatives that are really great. So there's a Daniels mentorship program where upper year students mentor first and second year undergrads. We have something called the AALD, which is also about upper year students kind of helping teach skills. In fact, it's really fantastic that some of the upper year students said, hey, we wish there had been someone, or we wish we'd had a bit more help with certain things, so we're going to organize, again, like a form of mentorship. There's now a Daniels housing initiative looking at the whole issue of housing, which obviously is a big deal in the Toronto area. And there are many others. Then other ways that people, I think, develop these really strong and lifelong friendships that students do. One is through our building. The fact that you've got most of your courses, the fact that there's a design studio space set aside for undergraduate students. Our cafe is closed at the moment, but it's going to reopen soon. And Daniel students often work at the cafe. And we have this wonderful space called the Commons where students meet and they talk and they work and they also meet with professors, and we really have this wonderful building, and it really feels like a social hub for our students as well. And I've already mentioned Chestnut as well. And then another moment, especially in some of our courses, I've definitely seen this from taking students to Berlin in our summer course, that the opportunity to spend several weeks traveling together allows people who maybe they didn't know each other in Toronto, but it allowed Daniel students to become very close friends while they're traveling on these courses. I am very confident, and in fact, we had an open house at Daniels just this past weekend called Fall Campus Day. One of the things we got to hear again and again were Daniel students who had volunteered to come to this open house telling interested applicants like yourselves about how much fulfillment they had found from making friendships with other students at Daniels.
Thank you. If somebody decides not to submit a portfolio, is there less of a possibility that they might be accepted?
No, we are really clear about this when we make it optional. Again, like we said, we know some students are going to be incredibly comfortable with the portfolio and others are not going to be. And there is no penalty if you're not and you decide not to do it. And one way to think of it is we know that people are going to arrive at Daniels with all kinds of different backgrounds. And so all our courses are set up. They are stimulating and they're challenging, but they're also recognizing the fact that, okay, some people haven't done this before. Most students have never made a model, so we have to show you how to do that. Most students have never used certain computer software like AutoCAD and Rhino, so we have to start from the beginning and teach you how to do that. And that's why we are very comfortable admitting students who do not submit a portfolio. But we're also really happy to look at the portfolios of the students who have work they want to show us. So that's why we give you the option.
So, math and physics are not part of the admission requirements, but are there any courses in this program that would need math or calculus or science as a prerequisite from high school?
No, there are no required courses that need it. There may be other things elsewhere in the University of Toronto that you want to do. So for instance, someone might decide, look, I want to take the university calculus courses, and then obviously you'd need the high school to be able to do that. There might be, and here I'm not certain, I'm just giving an example, we'd have to double check, but you could certainly imagine maybe a business or economics course requiring high school math, or you could imagine certain maybe environmental science courses requiring biology. Again, we'd have to check on a case by case basis. The other way of looking at it is you know that the architectural studies program at Daniels will let you move in very different directions. So if you're really, really good at calculus and physics, you're probably going to love our structures courses, and you might actually want to be taking some electives in engineering. If you're already someone who loves your art classes in high school, you might want to strongly consider doing a minor in visual studies. So you'd be an architectural studies student, but you'd actually be taking tons of fine art courses at U of T. And similar for all sorts of different things. So I think what you can do is you can think about what you'd like to do and what you're passionate about. And that might help tell you, I'd better do the high school physics this winter, or I'd better, maybe you're in grade 11 and you think, okay, actually, no, I am going to do the chemistry next year because there's some things I'd like to do that need chemistry. But you can also rest assured that if you don't do them and you do other things, that's perfectly fine. And that's why they are not required.
In thinking about possibly applying to grad school in the future, do students graduating from the Daniels faculty have somehow a better chance of getting into grad programs as opposed to maybe studying at another university?
Yes, but it's simply because of the quality of our education. What I think really helps, first of all, it's the broad range of different courses you'll take, which can help point people in all sorts of different directions. So for instance, it's a huge advantage for applying to a Master of Landscape Architecture course that you've already had landscape courses at Daniels and can build up a portfolio that way. Or similarly for urban design or urban planning programs. I think with the Master of Architecture, you have a really good chance while you're an undergraduate student to learn about the Daniels faculty's Master of Architecture, to speak to its students, to see their work, which I think really gives you an informed position to decide if you want to apply for the Daniels Master of Architecture or not, and to know how to structure your application. In other words, you'll understand the thing that you're applying for, which really, really helps. And then just across the architectural studies program, our students do such a variety of great work that it really helps them develop strong portfolios. The Daniels faculty has a really great reputation. We are known and our students are succeeding at universities all over the world. If you go to Harvard, if you go to UBC, if you go to Princeton, if you go to the Architectural Association in London, if you go to Hong Kong University, if you go to Yale or Columbia, you will find our graduates succeeding and thriving there in master's programs. Final thing to say is, of course, the strength of your master's application depends upon the strength of your work as an undergraduate. And probably the biggest thing that predicts your ability to get in or to be accepted to a master's program is the quality of your work as an undergraduate.
Thank you. For the one idea essay, is there anything in particular that would constitute a strong essay? Is there anything in particular that you might be looking for in that?
So, first of all, strong writing skills, which means that you've written it in a draft, You've had some other people read it over. You've made sure you're using correct punctuation, that your sentences are well structured, that the answer to the question flows through the answer well. We don't want you, in fact, we don't allow artificial intelligence for this. It's obviously depending upon the software. Sometimes it's really easy to tell, and other times it's really hard. But the warning I would give is if you let AI answer the question, you might end up with an answer that's just incredibly similar and kind of boring and banal, and also just similar to tons of other people who are perhaps might be using the same AI. So because it's a short text, you really can write it yourself. You can read it out loud to people to make sure that the writing is flowing very well. We know for some people this is easy. For others, English is a second or a third language. But again, it's something you've got the time to craft and to work on. So that's the first thing, quality of writing. Second thing is make sure you're answering the question. And again, reading this out loud to a friend can help make sure that you actually are addressing the question and you're giving us an answer to it. That, we have these 4 different prompts or these 4 different questions and you're choosing one. So it's really great if you're careful to make sure that you actually are answering the question. And then the final thing, having basically given you 2 pieces of advice that are sort of, be careful, make sure you're doing this right. The third is just to be willing to take risks, or rather, because there's no absolute formula, because you're not exactly certain, there's no just one thing you can write that makes sure you get in. Be honest with yourself, present yourself in the best way you can, use the essay to tell us about yourself. And then no matter what happens, you can be very, very proud of your application. And if you take that kind of attitude, you will be successful in setting yourself up for a great university education.
Thank you. So we are running close to the end of our time together, and so I know we won't get through all of the questions. And so if you didn't get your question answered, please send it to future students at daniels.utoronto.ca, and we would be happy to answer those questions. So one more question, and maybe we'll get to 2, we'll see. If someone would like to submit a portfolio, although not required, but they don't have a lot of work to choose from, is there some sort of summer portfolio program or some way to be able to get experience to create work?
So the Daniels faculty offers a really fantastic program called Design Discovery, which is based in Toronto. Students come for either 2 or 4 weeks. They study with master's students, and it's actually really great to get to know the master's students, and they're really excellent at helping high school students learn about design and architecture and generate work for portfolios. But you also, I would just suggest pick something you're interested in and work at it. So if you're passionate about maybe making manga on your iPad, just do a lot of it. If you're passionate about photography, join a local photography club or get together with 2 or 3 friends. Just take a lot of photographs. Maybe there's something you did in a high school class that you can expand. So you've done a bunch of paintings, yeah, this was interesting. Well, if you keep painting, you'll keep getting better at it, and then you could maybe even show us your progression through a series of 5 or 6 paintings. It's really, let's flip this around and let's say, okay, what are you interested in? Then you need to start thinking about how that can generate images to show it. So for instance, if you're into doing music composition, then you really should be submitting images of music scores that you have composed, because that tells us about you.
Thank you so much. So we are pretty much out of time. And so I want to thank you, Professor Peter Seeley, for delivering that presentation. And thank you to everybody who joined us and asked your questions. There were really some fantastic questions that were asked. So thank you to everybody, and I wish you all a wonderful rest of your day.